Welcome back to our continued study in Christology. Today we're at lesson 5. And at the end of this, you'll be better able to grasp the specific claims that God gave us through prophetic announcements of the coming Redeemer. The story of God is concerned about restoring man to a place of fellowship and renewed in righteousness to be with him. And since we cannot step towards God, God has stepped toward us. And so he is going to provide a Redeemer that's going to take care of unrighteousness and bring us to a place of forgiveness and restoration, reconciliation. Prophecy is one of the most important clues that we have as to who the Christ is and who he will be. We begin actually with words from Jesus after the resurrection. He begins to meet with some of his disciples, and on a road to Emmaus, there are two disciples that he meets, and this conversation is where we read these following words. In Luke's Gospel, chapter 24, verse 27 says, "And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself." Old Testament was divided up into to Moses, the law, the prophets, and the Psalms. And that was our divisions that we'd have. And he said, beginning then with the law and the prophets, with Moses all the way through the end of the prophets, all these prophecies came and spoke about the coming Redeemer. He's trying to solidify their confidence in his person, knowing that people would be excluded by these prophecies if they did not fulfill them. Even within our day and age, there have been some that have said, well, the specificity of prophecies. There are commentators that conclude that there are actually 300 prophecies concerning the coming Redeemer, the Messiah, the Christ. And we're not going to look at all 300, but these scientists went on and said, with a promise either being true or false, then you can mathematically begin to calculate the probability. So they took the 8 most essential areas of the life and ministry of the coming Christ, the Redeemer, and just that number alone left them to the conclusion that there would be a chance of 1 in 10 to the 17th power, 10 with 17 zeros behind it. Or, in other words, if you would take a coin this big and you would mark it with a marker, and you would have the amount of 10 to the 17th power, that would be like filling the state of Texas, the biggest state in the United States. All the coins would be spread out to a depth of above the knee of a grown adult, all the way through the state. So if you would blindfold one person and send them out without looking and pick of all the coins, pick out the one, what are the probability of doing it? Well, that's what we're talking about. It's a specific case. So God is now telling us the Redeemer is going to come, and so crucial is this for all of humankind that he was going to try and make our focus laser-like, to limit it down to the real one that we can discern and depict. In the Bible, there are 2 kinds of prophecy we have. We have general claims, and we have personal, specific claims. We're going to look at some of both. First of all, let's look at his lineage. We can begin narrowing our focus by excluding some that could not even come into question. God says, my Redeemer, beginning in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. The evil one has been trying to destroy God's plan from the outset. God said, I will bring a redeemer, and it's going to come through the line of Adam and Eve. And then a little time comes, and God is grieved because of the sin in humans, and so he's beginning to judge, and in his mercy and grace, he calls a family by the name of Noah. It says, build an ark, because there's coming destruction, but anybody that will trust the message that I give and join you in the ark will be saved through it. And only 8 then took God at his word. And so now, not only just Adam and Eve, but once again, it's narrowed. It's going to only be through the family of Noah, the Redeemer that's going to come. Then we see a man by the name of Abraham. God makes him a specific promise that I promise you that it will be in your offspring. It's going to be your son. I'm childless. That does not matter. I'm promising you it's going to be through your lineage. As a matter of fact, you're going to be so fruitful that they won't even be able to number all the offspring that you have, the generations that will come. You will be blessed. And then it once again narrows from Abraham, it goes to Isaac. Isaac was not his only, that was his most special child, but he also had Ishmael. But he said, through the lineage of Isaac, it will come. And then Isaac has then the son Jacob. Not Esau, but Jacob. And then from Jacob, then there are 12. Which one of the 12 is going to be the lineage? And he narrows it once again to specifically to the son and the generations following Judah. In Genesis chapter 49, verse 10, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. So specifically, he's narrowing it down. The first king of Israel is from the tribe of Benjamin. So automatically, then we would know it can't be through the tribe and the offspring of Saul. Automatically, anybody that would claim it would be prophetically excluded. But then he goes on to the family of David. In 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 16, when your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring after you, who shall come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. When he commits iniquity, I will discipline him with the rod of men, with the stripes of the Son of Men. But my steadfast love will not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away from before you. And your house and your kingdom shall be made sure forever before me. Your throne shall be established forever. So specifically, he says, David will always have a lineage that's going to be a king, and the Redeemer will be a lasting kingdom. There will be no end. So prophetically, we know now that it's going to be through the lineage of David. That's why the declarations in Matthew and Luke about the birth of Jesus and his lineage are so important. Then we have prophecies about his birth. In Micah chapter 5, verse 2, but you, O Bethlehem Ephratah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from of old, from ancient days. Bethlehem. The promised Redeemer has to be born in Bethlehem. But of course, now we have a dilemma because Matthew and Joseph are from Nazareth. And that is why we read August then is going to take a census, and he wants to collect taxes, so he makes everybody go back to their original birthplace. And so therefore, this young couple is now in the proper place of Bethlehem. That's a prophetic announcement of his birth. Additionally, in Daniel, or let's go look at Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. So it will be of, not only in Bethlehem, it will be of a virgin, and this child is going to be called Emmanuel, which is a Hebrew group of words meaning God is with us, or the with us God. Emmanuel. El is the back. The with us God. Many gods proclaim to be there, and they're distant, far, disinterested in people. But he is the with us God. That makes a difference. Coming not only from Bethlehem, but from a virgin. And Daniel chapter 9, verse 25 makes it even more specific. Know therefore, writes Daniel, and understand that from the going out of the word to restore and build Jerusalem to the coming of an anointed one, a prince, that shall be 7 weeks. Then for 62 weeks it shall be built again with squares and moat, but in a troubled time. We see he now gets specifically. Weeks are groups of 7. And even in the original language, then we're talking about 7 plus 62 is 69. 69 times 7, 483 years. He's specifically saying Jerusalem has been destroyed. First of all, Babylon came in and took them and took a bunch of people captive. And then now Persia has now become the world power, the place of Iran. And he said at a certain point, the king is going to say, okay, time to go back and rebuild Jerusalem. And from that edict, from that time point on, the clock will start ticking. You can count it 483 years, and the prince will be cut off. Something dramatic will happen in his life. And so if you begin to count, this is where you make the miraculous connection that counting 483 lunar years, which are different from a solar year, which 365, it's judged by the moon. And so and that comes out to 173,880 days. And mark this, please. From March 5th, 444 BC, when Artaxerxes said, you can now go back and start building with Ezra and Nehemiah, to March 30th, AD 33, on the Gregorian Julian calendar is likewise 173,880 days to the day. That is the day Jesus is crucified. He is cut off. You can with confidence know, because God was trying to be specific, pointing to the right person, that Jesus is the Redeemer. The person of Christ is also spoken of. Let's look at these. Isaiah chapter 7, verses 10 through 16. Ahaz is one of the kings that's so passive and not active in following his relationship with God that he is going to be spoken harshly to here by God. And again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz, ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol or as high as heaven. In other words, I'm the real deal. Please start with a relationship. And what else do I have to prove in your life for you to trust me and to follow me? But Ahaz said in verse 12, I will not ask and I will not put the Lord to the test. And he said, hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to worry men that you worry my God also? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. He shall eat curds and honey when he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the boy knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land whose two kings you dread will be deserted. before the little boy is of age where he knows the difference between saying right and wrong. He said that the two-king nation of Israel, they're in civil war right now, two kings in the lineage of David. He said they will be no more. The destruction, and now they've been in captivity, and they can go out from Artaxerxes. We read, curds and honey are what they fed, the common people fed their children, clotted milk mixed with honey, and it would create an appetite. Now it's time for them to start be weaned and to grow up. We also have prophecies about the life of Christ. In Malachi, last book of the Old Testament, behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me. And the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple, and the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight, behold, he is coming, says the Lord of hosts. I'm going to send somebody to prepare the way of the Redeemer that's to arrive. So we see John the Baptist doing exactly that. He says, not only will a Redeemer come, but somebody preparing the way of the Redeemer. In Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 15 through 18, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your brothers. It is to him you shall listen, just as you desired of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, or see the great fire anymore, lest I die. They were afraid when God revealed himself in the impression of fire. They said, we just don't want to have that kind of fear anymore. Verse 17, and the Lord said to me, they are right in what they have spoken. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. So the life of Christ speaks of being one of us, so that we do not live in fear of him, that we are accepting of him. The second person of the Trinity will lay off his glory and his strength and become one of us. And now we have assurance that he's true. In 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 35, listen to the words of Samuel. And I will raise up for myself a faithful priest who shall do according to what is in my heart and in my mind. And I will build him a sure house, and he shall go in and out before my anointed forever. It's always a question, who's going to take over when the spokesman for God is unable to do it? He said, I promise I am going to send an anointed one. So he's going to be a prophet. The Redeemer in Zechariah chapter 6, verse 13 says, it is he who shall build the temple of the Lord, and shall bear royal honor, and shall sit and rule on his throne. And there shall be a priest on his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them both. So this is going to be a king, not only a prophet, but he will be a king, and he will be a peacemaker. This is the amazing thing that the Redeemer is going to do. Not only is he going to be able to forgive and be merciful in his judgments, he's going to be able to restore and bring peace. And I don't know what it is in your culture or your particular circumstances, but here in Germany, we have people that have not spoken with their relatives, with their parents, with their siblings for decades. And God says, I am the one that will not only forgive, but I will bring reconciliation. I will bring peace. Not where people just lay down their weapons and say, we're declaring peace for a little while, but true, lasting peace. Isaiah 35, verses 5 and 6, goes on about the Redeemer and what he will do. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute sing for joy. For waters break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. He said when the Messiah comes, the Redeemer, he is going to verify his position. He will heal the blind. He will heal the sick. The lame will be able to walk again. The Redeemer that does not do that cannot be trusted, is not from me. Then we have the death of Christ is going to be foretold. Psalm 22, verse 1, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? So the coming Redeemer will say, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? Which we hear from Jesus on the cross. That's a promise and prophecy of the coming Redeemer. Psalm 22, verses 6 through 8. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by mankind and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They make mouths at me and they wag their heads. He trusts in the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let him rescue him, for he delights in him. So they mock and said, if you really love God, let God save you. As Jesus is on the cross. Prophesied once again that that's what the Redeemer would do. In Psalm 35, verse 11, malicious witnesses rise up and they ask me of things that I do not know. They've made up all kinds of accusations, just as we see in the trial of Jesus. But they go on further, prophecies, Isaiah 50, verse 6, I gave my back to those who strike and my cheeks to those who pull out the beard. I hid not my face from disgrace and spitting. The Redeemer will be beaten, will be scourged. His beard will be pulled out. He will be mocked. He will be abused. They will be spit upon. In Psalm 34, verse 20, he keeps all his bones. Not one of them is broken. Now, this is a very important prophecy. The Redeemer will not have a broken bone. But we do know by the crucifixion it was a long, agonizing death, and as they would be nailed to a cross, by the way that the arms were outstretched, at some point they would get tired, they would lean forward, and they could no longer breathe. But then their legs, at some point, would just automatically push them up, and they would gasp for breath, and once again fill their lungs with oxygen. And to shorten that process, the Roman soldiers would then come at a certain appointed time, and then they would break their legs. And once the legs were broken, they could no longer push up and get more oxygen again. Without that ability, then at some point they would be asphyxiated. They would die. But Jesus not only would be crucified, not only would he be beaten, but none of his bones are going to be broken. Additionally, we have the resurrection of Jesus Christ is going to be foretold, specifically and generally. In Psalm 16, verse 10, for you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. He promises that here he will not allow him to then be eternally separated from him in death. He will not be abandoned. In Isaiah 53:10, yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. So he will then pay for the penalty of sin and take that upon himself, but his days will be lengthened. So a general broad implication that there's going to be a resurrection. He goes on to say that there's going to be prophecies about the Redeemer's coming glory. Psalm 24, verse 8, who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Psalm 74, verse 12, yet God, my King, is from of old, working salvation in the midst of the earth. He is a king. He's worked it out for his good pleasure. He's the one that has taken care and provided for salvation. Isaiah 63:1 says, Who is this who comes from Edom in crimson garments from Bozrah, who is splendid in his apparel, marching in the greatness of his strength? It is I, speaking in righteousness, mighty to save. So the meek, mild Jesus that somehow might be depicted by some is going to one day rise up in strength and say, it is I who has provided for salvation. Daniel 7:14, and to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. So 2,000 years, even in spite of persecutions, even in spite of attacks, in spite of the evil one, his kingdom that he started still continues. And one day we look for the king to return and to be crowned with glory and beauty. And so I invite you to be involved in that completely. And just in case you need additional thoughts to hone your life on this, what is your purpose? In 1 Corinthians 10, verse 31, it's spelled out so specific for the people of Corinth from the pen of the Apostle Paul, who writes these words: so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Everything, whether it be as just as mundane as eating and drinking in daily life, or whatever you do all for his glory. That is our purpose. We've been called to be in tune. Not only were we created by him, we were created for him. We don't do it for our gain. We don't do it for our comfort. We don't do it for our good pleasure, our amusement. We do it for his glory and for his sake. Think about this for a minute. We possibly want his forgiveness and we want his reconciliation. That happens at the cross. But one day, he's going to be anointed King of Kings and Lord of Lords, where he becomes the supreme ruler. And it's not right to claim his cross without claiming that he owns the crown. So I invite you today not only to kneel at the cross, but also to recognize and accept the lordship of God in your life. The Redeemer is promised future glory. So we look and long for that day when he is crowned. And in the meantime, we serve him diligently and faithfully. Let's close in a word of prayer. O Lord, our hearts seek and long to be able to fully understand and grasp all that this means and the implications, not only for future generations, but also how that would be applied to our lives. We desire and long for your forgiveness. We also reach out today to say you deserve to be the one that's Lord of our life, the King. So we want your cross and we want you to wear the crown. We give you the lordship and leadership in our life. We recognize that you fulfill the prophecies of the Redeemer, and therefore we worship you. We want to worship you in spirit and truth. Send us your spirit and work in us. Be glorified in us. We ask all of this in your precious name. Amen. Until our next lesson, God bless you.